So I was scrolling around today on the internet and I came across this article called "Breast Cancer Risk Lowers for Women Who Wake Up Early, a New Study Finds." And I was reading into it, things are a little weird, so I got a little deeper into it and figured out it was based off this study titled, and it's a really long title, "Investigating Causal Relationships Between Sleep Traits and Risk of Breast Cancer, a Mendelian Randomization Study." Okay, so straight off the bat, while I was reading this article, the first thing that threw me off about it was that it said, and this is a quote, "While the not yet published study still awaits peer review." Okay, so the author already shows doubt right away that these findings might not actually be legit. So I'm just wondering why report on something that hasn't even been reviewed yet, because technically a high schooler could publish the exact same type of study. It's, yeah. And then I never get a why from the article. Like, why does waking up earlier lower the risk of breast cancer? They never really get into that. They just kind of skip over that. They just say, you wake up earlier, your risk of breast cancer lowers. And then thirdly, at the end of the study, the author concludes in a very vague way, as if they didn't even fully understand what the study meant. So, yeah, it really left me wondering of what was the point of reporting on this study.
One thing that gave me a little suspicion about the article is the fact that there are several deviations between the research and the article. The article doesn't even mention how the data was collected, which is through the use of the UK Biobank. Also, the article says that there were only 180 women used in the study, when the research claims they used data from thousands of women. The article also neglected to mention some of the other methods that the study used for its research besides self-reporting and sleep duration, including insomnia symptoms and genetic variants, which can both have a big impact on the results. Overall, the article was accurate on a few things, but they seem to have missed out on some of the critical steps in the actual research.
Yeah, definitely. They definitely messed up on some stuff. When I was reading it, it seemed like the actual research was done pretty poorly. They mentioned that they looked at women between the age of 40 to 70, but they never really said the significance of that, of breast cancer for women that age. They also said they eliminated other women who were diagnosed with cancer different than breast cancer, which eliminates the possibility of linking sleep habits to other types of cancer. As well as they did take into confounding variables that could affect sleep traits and then how those can have an effect on breast cancer, but they never continue to explain why both these things could affect sleep and breast cancer, and they never further explain that relationship between those things, which kind of makes the results seem a little muddy, you know, looking at people's health and how that relates. And the results say that 7,784 women were diagnosed with breast cancer from that study, but they categorize them in two different groups, a prevalent case and some incident cases. And the study never goes beyond that to explain what those mean, so that can be really confusing to read, really, really unclear. So we have a member of the research team here, Emma Anderson, to address some of these concerns we have. Emma?
Hello, and thanks for having me on The Glimpse. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, do you want to go ahead and maybe address some of these things we were talking about, some of these issues?
Yeah, so first off, I'll tell you guys how our research was conducted. So we used data from the UK Biobank, and I watched the last episode of The Glimpse, so I know you all know what that is, of course. We had a total of over 156,000 women who self-reported if they were what's known as a morning person or an evening person, just meaning do they go to bed late and wake up late, or do they go to bed early and wake up early. So we then took the data and used a multivariable regression to analyze the data to determine if there was a relationship between the likelihood of getting breast cancer and someone's sleep preference. So something I think we did well in the research is, as you can see in our literature review, in our meta-analysis of 28 different studies, there was a strong association between sleep pattern disruption and breast cancer. However, studies were limited on how actual sleep duration affected the likelihood of breast cancer, which is why we wanted to look more into the duration of sleep for our study. So also because we were using human subjects in our research, we had to make sure our research was ethical. In other words, we had to make sure that our research would not harm our human subjects.
I do appreciate those aspects of your research. There are a couple things that I think could have gone better, and we here at the Glimpse, we discussed ways that could have improved the study. So a lot of these are kind of building off what my fellow co-hosts have said, such as like widening the sample size to include other ages, or having a deeper examination into whether age plays a role in breast cancer, because as mentioned, you surveyed women 40 to 70. Women can get breast cancer at all ages. This is me personally. I'm just still a little confused about the difference between prevalent and incident cases of cancer. And I would have appreciated more of an explanation on what the difference is between those. In the research, you mentioned that you screened for alcohol and drug use and other habits, so you didn't want those connecting to breast cancer. You wanted to focus on the sleep. And this may just be a lack of knowledge on my part, but I don't know how how alcohol and smoking are related to breast cancer. I mean, we all know smoking causes other types of cancer, but I've never really heard of a connection to breast cancer, so I would have appreciated just some more literature specifically about that. And as mentioned, there was kind of a lack of results on your end. You made your conclusion, but I didn't really have a whole lot of evidence to support that. And then finally, just more of a personal thing, I'm much more of like a words person than a numbers person. So I was wondering if maybe you should have taken into account people's differences in their sleep needs. Like my mother, for example, can get off on like 5 hours a night and she's good, whereas I need a good 13. And so, there's a lot of differences that play into why a woman wakes up early or late. So those are just some ideas.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate any advice we can get, and I'll bring it to the research team.
Yeah, also, an interesting thought is how could this study maybe be turned into more of a qualitative study?
We love qualitative studies.
Yeah, we could examine like how waking up early in the morning compared to waking up later affects the subject's emotional stability during the day. So
Yeah, actually that's a really great point. Like maybe even interviewing people and doing a conversational analysis on that.
Yeah, that's another really interesting aspect. Maybe that will be my next study.
Well, I think that wraps it up for us today at The Glimpse. We're so glad that you guys tuned in for our second and unfortunately our final episode.
Got that cancellation bug.
But thank you so much for staying tuned with us to learn a little bit more about how sleep may or may not lower the risk of breast cancer.